Hey guys, welcome back to Buzzer to Buzzer. Today, we're going to start off with the larger segment of a news flash, discussing the impact of COVID-19 on the MLB and discussing the potential impact which the MLB suspending the season of one team can have on the whole NFL season, and diving into the latest trade news in the NFL. Without any further ado, let's start. All right, guys. So over the past couple of days, we became aware that the Miami Marlins of the MLB, they recently had 15 players test positive for COVID-19. And keep in mind that the MLB stadium just recently started on July 23rd. Now, not only were there 15 players infected with the disease, but also 2 staff members who contracted COVID-19. Now, since then, the Miami Marlins season has been suspended until they can prove that all those players have gotten a negative test result within 24 hours. Now, as a result, teams like the Yankees, the Orioles, and the Phillies, who were supposed to play the Miami Marlins, their games have been rescheduled for different teams as well. Now, guys, what are we thinking here? Rob Manfred, the commissioner of the MLB, has said multiple times, and after this whole incident with the Miami Marlins, that the MLB is not going to consider canceling the season. What do we think? Do we think that the MLB cannot do what the NBA is doing so perfectly? What are our thoughts here?
Well, I think they can't replicate what's being done in the NBA just because you can't do sports without a bubble. You need to limit the number of exposure that players get to the outside world in order to limit the coronavirus cases. And with baseball, they're playing as if it's normal, right? There's no you fly to other cities, you play there, you fly back home, etc. And so I really don't think that they can replicate what the NBA is doing. I think that's going to be a huge problem that we're going to see in the NFL in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I actually have to applaud the NBA for being having the whole concept of the bubble. I think that so far they're just executing the whole bubble situation perfectly and not having any fans. And I guess with basketball, the NBA, it's just a lot more simple because all you need is a court. And with the MLB, I think they need to have some sort of alternative. I think just going back to what they normally do as a Warrior instead of flying around and just playing at stadiums is not going to work. And they need to change something if they want to limit the number of cases or just have a more safe environment for the league in general.
Yeah, for sure. They need to take a safer route. I know they started the season with a plan of keeping, teams in a certain region. So all the Central Division teams stay in the Central region of the country, and the same for the East and the West. But that seems to not have been working. I mean, just now, Miami Marlins, they're suspended until Monday. What are they going to do until then? Nobody knows. What's going to happen after that is also something nobody knows. It cancels games for many other teams and it has collateral damage. Because the Miami Marlins just played the Phillies, even that game got canceled a few days ago. It's having collateral effects, and I think the MLB should take a much more safer route and reconsider the continuance of the season.
Now, guys, I think we can all agree that Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA, has always, since he got inducted after the late David Stern, he's always shown that leadership, and something which many sport platforms applaud him for. Now, why do we think that the MLB, especially Rob Manfred, to call him out especially, why do we think that leadership has not been as strong or as comparable to somebody, say, like Adam Silver, who's the facts are obvious. The NBA 2 days ago had a whole COVID-19 test, and 0 results came positive. Now, there's a huge difference between the MLB and NBA. What do we think here?
I think part of it is the fact that there's different sports. With the NBA, as B stated, all you need is a court. With the MLB, you can't have a bubble because the fields are massive. Same with the NFL. So I think it's as a result, not of lack of leadership, but just the circumstances that both leagues are in. I just think NBA has a much easier time dealing with it because of the courts that they have.
I also think what has a major impact is the volume of games. I think baseball requires many more games than basketball does. Even if they did try keeping them in one city that has 2 stadiums, I think it's still very there's a lot of games being played and a lot of players going in and out of one field over the course of a short period of time. So it could definitely have an impact on.
Now, here's something interesting which I read about. The MLB, they issued a statement saying that we all know that there's going to be 60 games being played now instead of the regular. However, they issued a statement saying that, like, say the Miami Marlins, in case that they're not able to finish all 60 games, that's fine. And that uneven records, so say the Miami Marlins only play 50 games compared to, like, the Phillies, they finished all 60 games. They say that's fine, but they'll weigh the records evenly. What do we think about that? Do we think this is going to be like a fair way to weigh out the teams, say when the end of the season comes?
I don't think it's a fair way because obviously if you play less games against worse teams, you're obviously going to win more games. But I think it's like the safest alternative that they could find right now, and it's not like they can force a team who's like the Marlins, who are going through a surprising amount of cases in terms of the players and the staff in general. And I think like that's like a good alternative right now, but I don't think it's like the best. I think they should keep finding something.
I also think what's going to happen is that Miami isn't going to be the only team that kind of has to go through this situation. You're definitely going to see more outbreaks happening, and other teams are going to have to, I guess, quarantine and then play fewer games. So I think by the end of it, I think most teams won't be able to finish all 60 games. So I think that would be taken into consideration as well.
Well, let's talk about the effect which this whole situation within the MLB is going to have on other sports, that being the NFL. Now, we all know that the NFL has canceled all preseason games, but guys, what effect does this whole outbreak within the MLB, of recently just starting a couple days ago, have on the NFL? And do we think that it will impact the NFL potentially being canceled all the way? Will we see a reduction in the number of games being played? What are our thoughts for here?
I think the NFL, they definitely can't reduce games. I think the baseball was like capable of doing that because they play so many games. So if they cut a few games here and there, it won't be a big impact. But in the NFL, I think it's 17 games now this season. I think that you can't cut many games from that schedule, not to mention that each game is much more important than one game in baseball.
Yeah, I think with NFL, I think this is going to be a major issue that's going to pop up. What happens if a team does get COVID? You have to quarantine for 2 weeks. That means 2 games lost for that team and collateral damage to the other teams that they play. And so I think, Roger Goodell's going to have to figure out a way to really kind of enforce the rules and make sure that this doesn't happen. Because if this were to happen with NFL, the consequences are going to be much more severe for them than in the MLB.
Now, consequently, do we think that the NFL has a higher chance of being canceled all the way, meaning no football for this upcoming fall? Do we think that's a stronger possibility now?
I think it's a much stronger possibility of it happening for the NFL compared to the MLB, because the MLB, even this season, they limited their roster size to 30. But in the NFL, you need every single sub, you need every single player every week. You're going to need all 52 guys to be ready to play. So I think it's going to be a greater risk for the NFL and a greater chance of them canceling.
Yeah, definitely. The NFL, with the amount of teams and what Harsh said, how they need every single player on that team in case of injuries or they need substitutions. I think the NFL is really in a tough spot, and the NBA is. I think they're handling it really well, and even the MLB. I think it's going to be easier harder for the NFL to figure out what to do in the situation.
Yeah, for sure. Looking at roster sizes and whole team personnel, the NBA for sure has the least amount of people necessary in order to make a whole game work, make the whole situation work. But as compared to the MLB and especially the NFL, where there's 55-man rosters, you got trainers for each man. There's a whole other level of staff. So that plays a huge factor and could be the factor leading into why the NFL might be totally canceled. But anyway, we've talked about the NFL, but there is also something which we got to talk about today, that concerning Abib's favorite team, that being the Seattle Seahawks, and the trade they have made, a heavy trade, that might say, for safety Jamal Adams. Well, let's talk. All right, guys. Well, recently the Seattle Seahawks and the New York Jets were involved in a trade. The Seattle Seahawks gave up their 2021 first round and third round pick, along with their first round pick in the year 2022. Now, all of this was for safety Jamal Adams. Now, Abi, I want to get started with you and asking, what are your thoughts, and do you think that this will have a large impact for the Seattle Seahawks?
Yeah, definitely. Jamal Adams, and even before he was a Seahawk, I think that he was the best strong safety in the league. And I think this is a really good addition to our team in terms of our defense. And I just think that Seahawks have always had a mediocre defense after the Legion of Boom was kind of disbanded. And I think that we're slowly building it up, and I think it's about to surprise a lot of teams.
Yeah, to add to that, I think the Jets won this trade, in my opinion, too easy. You can't give up 2 first-round picks, a starting safety, and a third-round pick for. I understand Jamal Adams, but you see what the Bears gave up for Khalil Mack. They didn't give up nearly as much. You see, just for Jadeveon Clowney, another pass rusher, the Seahawks didn't give up too much for him either. I think this was a steep price to pay for starting safety.
I feel like this move was a move to save face in the situation. I mean, they've been struggling to re-sign Jadeveon Clowney all off season, and he's still a free agent right now. I think they're like, okay, we lost one defensive piece. We got to bring something in to keep our defense in check to help Russell Wilson. I think it's a bit of an instinctive move, and hopefully it pays off for them, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like the Jets, as many NFL GMs consider, fleeced the Seahawks.
For sure. And, it's questionable, though. Is Jamal Adams the best safety? I mean, looking at his 2019 stats, he put up 6.5 sacks, 1 interception. All right, so do we think that the Seattle Seahawks bringing in Jamal Adams, will this allow them to be the number 1 seed in the NFC West over the 49ers?
I think that's a tough one because the 49ers obviously, I think, have the best, or I guess you can say top 3, at least top 3 defenses in the league. And I think that the Seahawks have a great offense right now, and with their defense getting better, I think that this might push them to win the division next year. And I think that it's a good piece. But also, I just want to say that, as Harsh was saying, like with saving face, I also think that this is more like a short-term vision for the Seahawks, as in they just wanted a really good defensive player, and they obviously lost a lot of good picks, but they just wanted a player, and I think they're worrying about how they do next year more than how they do in 5 years from now, let's say.
Yeah, I think to add on, like if you look at the record last year, it was very close. I mean, the Seahawks almost beat the 49ers twice. It came down to a game of inches in Week 17. But last year, the Seahawks won 11 games by 7 points or less. That's probably never going to happen again, ever. They got very lucky in a lot of games, missed field goals, turnovers at the end of games, stuff like that. And so I still believe that the 49ers will win the division. However, I do think it can be close with a key addition like Jamal Adams.
I think this really comes down to, can Jamal Adams fill the hole that Jadeveon Clowney had in rejuvenating that defense? I think when Jadeveon Clowney came to that defense, he really revitalized that whole front seven. Can Jamal Adams do that to the secondary of the defense and help keep them in a contention shape?
One thing I'll add is if somehow the Seahawks can get Jadeveon Clowney back, then that is a very scary defense coupled with Russell Wilson and DK Metcalf. If they are able to bring Jadeveon Clowney back, I can definitely see them winning the division, maybe even the number 1 seed in the NFL.
Whoa, okay. I think for sure that they'll edge out. It'll be close, but I think with the addition of Jamal Adams, they'll get that first seed in the NFC West. But if they get Jadeveon Clowney as well, that's game over. That's going to be one heck of a team accompanied with a rising receiver like DK Metcalf, and the combination with Russell Wilson. We just got a snippet of what it was last year. And this year, if the NFL does play, we could see a dynasty outbreak in Seattle like before.
Yeah, I really want the Seahawks to get Clowney, but I think as the time goes on and he's not re-signing anymore, I just think that the Seahawks have to kind of add more defensive pieces to kind of see if Clowney wouldn't re-sign. They need to be prepared to go on and still perform the way they always perform, even without Clowney. And I think that's one reason why they signed Jamal Adams, to add another defensive piece.
All right. Well, for sure, a lot more to see and further developments to talk about, considering the MLB and the NFL, seeing how their seasons will span out, and considering if they might even play or not. And going to be interesting to see if the NFL does play, how the Seattle Seahawks do with the new addition of Jamal Adams. As always, we hope that you guys enjoyed. Leave your comments and ideas of, do you think the NFL will resume? And what do you think about the MLB? Will they continue? Will Rob Manfred make the decision to stop? In the comments down below. As always, like, subscribe, and we'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.